Yo, what's going on, everybody? I'm with my guy Okoye here. We're going to be reacting to the Mike Zimmer podcast interview here. Okoye, what's up, bro?
Man, what's up, man? You guys hear any cursing? It's just me in traffic. But yeah, what's up with you, man?
Hey, bro, it's worse with me when I'm out there on the road, man. Man, those Philly drivers are not fun to deal with
I'm
whatsoever.
actually I'm actually lying though, because I don't do road rage because of what you just said. Philly is so crazy, you know, and everybody here is strapped to the gills with ammunition. It's like it's not the place to do a lot of road rage. And I don't do no arguing on the road, to be honest with you. And
Oh
I drive
man,
real safe. I drive real safe anyway. But I was just joking around.
oh man. Look, I'm aware of my surroundings in the suburbs. Man, somebody cuts me off. What the fuck, man? The hell are you doing? Once I cross that Cheltenham line, I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
once you cross the county line, you got to relax. You gotta
oh,
relax,
I'm
buddy.
very sorry for being an inconvenience to you. You can go here. You're good.
That's after they. You say that after they run your foot over. You be like, "I'm very sorry that I have my foot out all on the sidewalk in your way, sir." You know what I mean? I should have
Um,
totally known that you were going to jump the sidewalk like you did and run that red light. How rude of me!
oh man. Hey, let's get
Like,
into this interview. If you guys haven't already, it's on the Doomsday podcast page. It's with Ed Werder and Matt Mosley. So I got the link in the description. And if you guys want to go check it out, make sure to go check it out. They did a good job with this. So
yeah.
I'm gonna present
I'm gonna share
this.
this on Twitter real quick too. Let me see what's up. I can do that.
Word. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting nuggets in this. A lot of interesting nuggets. I got a lot of good stuff from this.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
All
so
right, go ahead, man. I'll shoot the Twitter link out when I get off the road. I can't see where to share it from the phone interface.
okay, cool. Let me know if you can hear this.
Mike Zimmer.
Can you hear that?
Hey, we're here with Mike Zimmer in the team meeting room at the Cowboys.
You can hear that, Okoye? Yo. Yo, Okoye, you can hear that? Okoye, can you hear me? Yo, Okoye. I don't know if you can hear me. Yo, Okoye. Yo, can you
I
hear
can't
me?
hear you if you're talking, Brody.
Oh, okay. Let me
Can't hear nothing you're saying.
Chat. Okay, hold on. Let me mute. Yo, can you hear this?
Wait, Tad got us in the team meeting room.
Very
Can you believe
nice.
that with the most.
You can hear that? Oh, damn.
Can't hear you.
Technical dip. Can you hear me now? Hold up. Let me check this out.
Yeah. Test, 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 test. Yeah, it's not me.
Yo, can you hear me now?
I can't hear you, Chris.
Damn, what the
I
hell?
can't hear you.
What the hell is going on? Hold up. Chat. Test. Can you guys hear me? Can the audience hear me? Audience, can you guys hear me? We can hear y'all, but can't hear each other. Okay. They're saying they can hear both of us. Hear us. Okay. Yeah, this is what I'll do. Oh shit, I don't even know if I can do that. Let me so you guys can hear us. Okay. We just can't
I
hear.
can't hear you though.
Okay.
Since
Hold up. That's weird as hell. Because I can hear Okoye and everybody else can hear us. So let me see.
Most important coach on the staff.
YouTube clips.
Okay. That's probably thing. Can you hear the interview? Oh, he might have me on mute.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you, bro.
Do you have me on mute? Do you have me on mute, bro?
I don't know what you're saying.
We can hear both y'all. Okay. Okay, we're having some technical difficulties here. We're sorry about that. Is he on mute? No. He's on the stage right now. So yeah, pretty much what's going on here with the interview is, if you guys don't know, they're doing OTAs right now. And pretty much with the OTAs, they were able to get access to Mike Zimmer. So because of that, can you hear me now, Okoye? Still can't hear me. Damn. What the hell?
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna cut it, and then I'm coming back in.
Okay, word. That works. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I thought that it was very interesting. One thing that I really liked about this interview is that you really got to dive deep into Mike Zimmer's mindset as a coach, right? There's some things when it comes to accountability and discipline that I think that Cowboys fans are going to really like to hear, because I think that a big problem with this team last year, especially on the defensive side of the ball, was just how undisciplined they were. And I think that you're going to see a big change in that this year with Mike Zimmer. He even says during the interview, I posted the clip on my Instagram page, that they were doing some things in OTA that he didn't really like. He wasn't pleased with the effort. He wasn't pleased with how they were conducting themselves during the practice. And Mike Zimmer let him know, like, yo, this is not acceptable. So
I can hear you now.
all right, there we go.
Yeah, like when you brought in the Zim footage, I couldn't hear anything.
Okay. Let's see if we can try and screen share that now. Also share tab media. Yes, that's what we're doing here. Okay, can you hear me now? We're still good?
Still good.
Cool.
We did it in some really nice.
Can you hear the
gigs
audio now?
in a huge meeting room setting, and Ed and I, it really put us in the mood. And I thought hopefully we'll come across as huge football guys when you get to hear this. It is now time to listen in to our interview with Cowboys defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer.
Hey, we're here with Mike Zimmer in the team meeting room at the Cowboys. Tad got us in the team meeting room.
Very nice.
With the most important coach on the staff, other than Paul Gunther. Anyway, Mike, welcome back to Dallas. You've left the Vikings 2 years ago. You're out of football for a couple of years. As you've come back to the game now and you've looked at tape of these guys, what first impressions do you have about the players you're inheriting?
There's a lot of talent here. I do think we're thin in some areas, but hopefully we've accomplished some of the things in the draft with Nealon and Marist, trying to get those guys up to speed and adding a few bigger bodies. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been exciting. You look at the success they've had over especially the last 3 years. It's fun to work with these guys.
You said you had a time of reflection when you were out for a couple of years. What was the most important thing you feel like you either changed in your approach, or just when you had time to actually just kind of sit there? I'm just kind of wondering, what, by the way, did you watch as a fan, or was it more like a coach on Sundays? Were you taking notes? What was that like?
No, I wasn't taking notes. It was more like just watching. I wasn't a fan of any team, maybe a fan against a team, but other than that, I honestly I didn't watch a Minnesota game. Still haven't since the day I left. No, I just watched, and then talking about reflection, it's about you go back and you sit back on think back at things over the course of the 8 years that I was there. I can remember one thing very specifically. We went to NFC champ. We won. We beat the playoffs, Saints in the playoffs, in the divisional round, and we won on the last second. We should have won the game easy, but anyway, come back and we get the miracle, the Minnesota Miracle, or Minneapolis Miracle, I guess they call it. But the next week I'm just back in it, and it's we got a chance to go to the Super Bowl and a conference championship game, and I was just like, okay, this is business as usual. And guys will get back into it. And I probably didn't take into effect the mental thing that everybody was talking about, Super Bowl in Minnesota. The emotions that came from that game. All those things. So it was a lot of reflections like that, and then going back over the course of each season, talking about okay, what could I have done better? How could I have helped the team be a better team? Things like that.
Did you, when you?
So is there anything right now that you want to comment on when it comes to this? Because one thing that I want to bring up to people is that Mike Zimmer with Case Keenum got that Minnesota team to the NFC Championship game. Like, when you talk about a guy who gets the most out of the talent on his football team, Mike Zimmer is a guy for that, right? Like, you saw the type of players that he developed in his time with the Minnesota Vikings, right? Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, Daniil Hunter, Harrison Smith, all these guys, Everson Griffin.
Yeah.
And you want to know what's crazy? Everson Griffin went to Dallas, didn't really perform that well, got back with Mike Zimmer, and he performed at a higher level than he did in Dallas, right? So, when you talk about a guy getting the most out of his talent and being able to develop the talent that he's been given, I think a big reason why things kind of went sour in Minnesota is that, the core pieces of his defense got a little bit older. Anthony Barr got a little bit older. We saw what Anthony Barr was the year after he left Mike Zimmer and went to Dallas. He wasn't good. So I think
now there's a disagreement when it comes to me as it pertains to Everson Griffith and Anthony Barr. Scheme, he just shows to me that scheme actually matters. And if you're not putting players in the right scheme or in the right position to make plays, then you could take a good player and make them look average or bad. And for a player to look extremely good in a scheme that doesn't work, he's playing hero ball. Like we have D-Law, for instance. D-Law used to play a lot of hero ball. He started to kind of like tighten up, I think, after the San Fran game, the last San Fran playoff loss. Because last year, I think, was the most disciplined football I've ever seen out of D-Law, right? As far as setting the edge and making sure he keeps contained, not over pursuing running quarterbacks, keeping that wide angle and keeping contained. He's been doing that a lot better. But I say that because when players come here that are supposed to be good from other places, like even Rashaan Evans, for instance, right? If they come to a team that doesn't have the right scheme, and judge Griffin or Barr for their year here because of the way we were deploying them. You know what I mean? You have them on a heavy rotation. You don't have a scheme that's set to funnel to any particular player, and that showed. That showed. We even have, like I said, we have Micah Parsons here, who is an all-world player. But you would be hard pressed to see all of his talent on the last 3 seasons that he's played because we don't use them in consistent spots, right? We'll have them. The consistent spot we use them we don't like, meaning just on the edge. We'll have them go out and guard a guy like Galladay or a wide receiver and do it well, and then that'll be like one game per year you'll see something like that happen. So I said all that to say, like, I don't judge those particular players, but I do look at Zim as a guy that is a overachiever. When I look at the teams that he's never had a team that is as talented, in my opinion. Not even in my opinion, just really, he hasn't had a team that's as deep and as talented as the team that he just inherited. but you can see he's always performed, and those defenses have always performed at a high level because he knows he needs coaches on the field at particular spots. You have Barr and Kendricks on the second level. You had Griffith on the front line along with those defensive tackles that he's always had. He had Harrison Smith on the back end, and he kept Terrence Newman for a long time as well as one of the staple corners in that secondary room. So in every room, there's a guy that understands what Zimmer's football or level of football is required, what he's requiring for those positions, and somebody that can translate that on the field. You know what I mean? He's always had that. You know what I mean? Cincinnati had that. He took Roy Williams over there along with Terrence Newman. So that tells me that, number one, he knows what he wants, and number two, he's loyal to the guys who understand what he's asking for, because he, like I said, he took Roy with him. He revived Roy Williams' career over there in Cincinnati. He took Terrence Newman with him. Terrence Newman stayed Terrence Newman throughout his career. And that's because once you understand what's required within Zim's scheme, you don't have to be great to play great in Zim's scheme. You just got to really be where you're supposed to be and do your job. If you are great, though, you'll be a world beater in this game. You'll be a world beater in this game.
Oh, no, 100%. And even like Brian Broaddus talked about it the other day on Jeff Kavanaugh's show. The Cowboys secondary, when I think Zim was working with, I think it was Campo, they told him, hey, you're playing 4-3 this year. You're going to go play 3-4 next season. And he did a pretty good job with that defense, even though he didn't really have the personnel for that. So that shows me that he's multiple in the way he's able to deploy his defenses. Which is why, like, obviously, I think they're going to play a 4-3 here. But I think that, a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence is tailor-made for this specific scheme. And I think that DeMarcus Lawrence will have the best season that he's had in a few years here. And also, like when we talk about the personnel that the Cowboys lost from last season that they don't have this year, the reason why I'm not tripping off that is because if you're playing a Mike Zimmer scheme, Dante and Dorrance would not have been much help for you in this scheme. On top of the fact that this isn't a scheme that necessarily rotates guys at a high level like Dan Quinn does.
Love you, man. All right, I just dropped my son off. My bad.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, no. They don't. Mike Zimmer's scheme doesn't rely on rotation nearly as much as Dan Quinn does. So, like the fact that we did lose some depth with Dorrance and Dante, they weren't a scheme fit to begin with. And on top of the fact that, Mike Zimmer isn't as reliant on rotation as Dan Quinn is. So, in particular, like I'm not really tripping out about those guys. And I think that, Nealon is a guy that Nealon and Sam Williams, if I'm Sam Williams, let me just say this. I'm hip to hip with Mike Zimmer. I'm telling him, teach me everything you know. Teach me all the ins and outs about your defense, because if Mike Zimmer gets his hands on Sam Williams, I've seen him elevate less talented defensive ends and make them really good players. You give him Sam Williams, I think that as a talent coming out of college, Sam Williams was a better pure talent than Danielle Hunter. It would not surprise me if he could turn Sam Williams into Danielle Hunter. I'm not saying that he is.
And we keep doing this, right? That's why we keep. I agree with you, but when I look at Sam Williams, when I look at Mozzie, when I look at these guys that are being drafted by the Cowboys, and what was his name? The defensive line coach that went over to Seattle.
Durday.
Durday to me. I don't have anything like good to say about him, to be honest, when it comes to, I like his accent. That's what I'll say good. I like his accent. But as far as his development of defensive line players, to take a guy, like they've done this consistently. So to take a guy like Mozzie and never ask him to do any Mozzie-esque type stuff, like, hey, man, listen, we see you losing weight. We need you to get heavier. We need you to, play more square, and ask him to do that. So that's a mismanagement of talent to me. When you see a guy like Sam Williams to me is the most talented pure defensive end on this team, period. And I say that over Micah Parsons, and I know you guys are going to snap on me for saying that, but I'm going to prove my point. I always do. And you can look at the film when you look at this. Micah Parsons is the best pass rusher and maybe the league, right? One of the best in the league. Pass rusher, but run stopping from the defensive end position, we already know he's not there when it comes to that because of his size. Obviously, if you double team a guy that's 250 and you bring 700 pounds towards him or 600 pounds at him consistently, he's not going to keep winning that fight. You know what I mean? So, when you're double teaming a guy on the edge that's only 250, that's what you're going to get, especially one who relies on his speed. Now, when you look at Sam Williams, though, in college, Sam Williams played in a 3-3-5 scheme, okay? That means he was one of 3 down linemen, and Ole Miss did not blitz that often. You can look up the stats. I don't know, maybe people will try to prove me wrong, but in the sacks that I recorded for him, they were rarely on a blitz. How often do you see 3 linemen getting to a quarterback in a 3 down lineman scheme? Like, it doesn't happen that often. So for him to get 11.5 sacks coming into the league on a 3-man line is ridiculous. For him
Led
to be
the
able to stop
SEC.
the run. What'd you say?
He led the SEC that year in sacks.
Exactly. For him to be able to stop the run consistently as a 2-gapping, one of 3 down lineman is ridiculously hard, right? So he's good at stopping the run. He's better at stopping the run from the edge than he gets credit for, and then Micah Parsons. But he also can get there. He can get to the quarterback from a 3-man line. Like, that is ridiculously hard. So Sam Williams is the most overall talented defensive end on this team right now, today. And you couldn't tell that under Durday. And also, even if you look at the 4.5 sacks he got, when you say he could be Danielle Hunter, that's not real hard. He could have been Danielle Hunter last year if you just put him on the field all game. He would have been a 10-sack, 12-sack guy on the field all game. And and Micah Parsons would have got more sacks because you would have had another guy on the field consistently that you have to pay attention to, whether it be in him or Fowler. But you didn't put either one of those guys on the field that often. That was dumb.
No, 100% agreed. And like, you see certain reps that he has, like he's going up against Jordan Mailata, who's probably top 5, top 7 left tackle in football, and he beats the shit out of him. It's not a coverage sack, and he forces a fumble. I have tape from him in his rookie season going up against Penei Sewell, and it was child's play. He beat the shit out of Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell is one of the best he might be the best offensive lineman in football, period. And he beat the shit out of him. Elton Jenkins is another guy. You can rush him on the edge. You can rush him standing up as like a 4-eye, something along those lines.
Yep.
And he can win regardless. So, to me, I think if Sam Williams takes the approach of, kind of like Jalen Tolbert did last year with Brian Schottenheimer, the difference is Jalen Tolbert is nowhere near as talented as Sam Williams. If he takes that approach and he tells Mike Zimmer, teach me everything you know, I want to be the best player I can be. If you can get that, bro, this guy is a 15-sack guy. That's the talent he has.
Easy.
And not just a 15-sack guy. He is a guy that can be effective against the run. He could be a 3-down defensive end for you. He's not
Sam
a guy
Williams,
that you take out and run downs. Like, he's a guy
you don't take him out at all. Like, you find out who you're starting for is, and then that's your mainstay. And to me right now, if you're looking at Micah Parsons as a guy that you're going to use like an Anthony Barr, you got him and Kendricks, behind the line, and Micah Parsons like your 3rd down chess piece. Sam Williams and D-Law are your edges in this defense, in my opinion. And then you have Osa and Mozzie as your 3-and-1 tech. That's how that's a starting lineup, in my opinion. You keep it that way, and if they get tired or whatever, you rotate, obviously, or situationally you rotate. But that's the good problem that we have. You have guys like Nealon, who's now drafted pretty high, is going to push Sam. You got guys like D-Law, who's just, obviously going to get his time because of who he is. And then you got guys like Mozzie, you got Justin Rogers, you got a lot of talent. Chauncey that's in there for Hoko. Osa can even play some edge though. But you got a lot of talent on this defensive line room, whether you're looking at the defensive tackles or the edges. And it's going to be a very competitive training camp because the thing that I like about Zim, he doesn't give a shit where you were drafted or what your name is. can you do what I'm asking you to do at a high level and consistent level? That's what he's looking for. And that's going to make everybody step up. So Sam Williams definitely, it's not about whether he takes the bull by the horns and decides he wants to be focused and tuned in. It's, hey, listen, hungry dogs eat here. So if you're hungry like you were last year, you want to be uncaged and unleashed. All he has to do is show it in practice and show it in camp, and Zim's going to do the rest. And Zim's motivational style is one that you don't want to let him down. You know what I mean? So I think that you'll get the most out of Sam anyway, regardless of what approach he takes. The same Sam, because there was nothing wrong with him last year. I think his problem was, you just need to use him more. You need to use a guy like that more.
Yeah, no, 100%. So let's get going
When
with
you
this
left Minnesota,
interview.
did you think you'd coach again in the NFL?
Yeah, I didn't know. I figured I'd have some opportunities. Honestly, I thought, I had a 50, I don't know, whatever, it's 56 winning percentage or something, and been to 3 playoffs and conference championship game. So I figured somebody would be calling right away to be a head coach, but they didn't call. So, I just going about my business, and, I did stay on top of things. Marvin Lewis and I are good friends, and we did it wasn't a podcast like you guys do, but it's
Not a high dollar operation like this.
but it was something where we'd watch film, we'd talk about players, and we'd sit down afterwards and we'd communicated a lot because he was out at the time too. So I mean, I didn't. You never really know, when you're out and you get to be a certain age, and those kind of things.
I think the most remarkable stat or fact about you returning to Dallas is Mike McCarthy's the 5th different head coach that you've worked for in this organization.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about the guys you've worked for and the way that they've influenced you as a coach?
Well, all different. I was very close to Dave Campbell, obviously, when he became the head coach and I became the coordinator here. But we were good friends for a long time. Coach Switzer, I think, with Coach Switzer, I felt like I learned how to treat people better, because he was always a very caring person, very smart football guy. And, with Parcells, I felt like, he was a guy always poking the stick. But honestly, I learned more football from him than I did anybody. And he'd walk into my office. We'd have the team meeting. We'd walk back from the team meeting because they'd go to special teams. And my office was next door. And he'd come and sit down. And he'd say, write this down when you're a head coach, and write this down. So I still have a binder of things that he told me. But, when I was an assistant, I was just concentrating on being the best assistant I can, getting the players to play the best. I wasn't, my whole deal wasn't to be a head coach. And then when he started planting that seed all the time, it's like, yeah, maybe I should try to do this and see what happens.
Isn't that crazy, that staff that you were on? You didn't know it at the time. I was writing this down earlier. Sean, Anthony Lynn, Todd Bowles, Sperano, Haley. One of the guys ended up being the Colorado head coach, your assistant secondary coach. I mean, isn't that kind of wild? And I don't know how much that is just, boy, Bill had assembled this incredible staff, or is just Bill, his very presence or working under him, but it's kind of amazing when you think back on that.
Yeah, I think, 2 things. Usually it's success, and then, whoever the mentor is, and he's telling you, he's talking about you to the people that call him, or, the same thing with me. I had two coaches leave when I was in Minnesota to become head coaches. And so, I think a lot of that is not necessarily the tree, but, you have success, and people can, people want people that have been successful.
Have you chilled out a little bit on like when you get to the office? Bill used to talk about arriving at whatever 4. He said he got there at 4. I never knew if that was totally true, but you were always there. Whatever time he rolled in.
Some days he was there very, very early. Not all the time, but there's some days that he would beat me in. No, I still get here pretty early. It's a little bit later now because it's the spring. I think, when it gets to the fall, I'll be back to the old deal.
You mentioned it. You inherit a defense.
So is there anything you want to comment on there? I mean, it was kind of just some filler stuff, but one thing that caught my ear at the end there was, it seems like he's still very hungry to maybe get a head coaching job and to prove that, he's one of the very best play callers in football. And sometimes some time off is actually just what the doctor ordered for some of these guys. And I think Mike Zimmer kind of fits into that category.
Well, I don't think it was filler, because when you start talking about the Parcells tree, Parcells is my favorite coach of all time. Like, he's my favorite coach of all time. I love what he is as far as what he's created in the league. He's really the reason that a lot of people watch football to this day, and they don't even realize it. I just got finished watching the Tom Brady roast with my wife, right? And I'm like, that's crazy, right? So when I'm sitting there watching that, I'm looking at Belichick, I'm looking at Brady, Bledsoe, all these people that came even from that tree, are they're like a branch off of that tree, because that dynasty is a spawn of the Parcells tree as well. So the impact that he had on the game is immense. And when you can get some of that, into your locker room from a coaching standpoint, it's crazy. Because even when you're looking at the players that we like, Romo and Witten and so on, like a lot of the players that we endear here, like DeMarcus Ware, guys that we really liked, were also of that Parcells tree, because not only does he know how to spot talent, he knows how to develop it, not just the talent, but the man behind the mask as well. So Zim has that, and what you would call like the intangibles from a motivational standpoint, due to being a part of that Parcells tree. So I think that speaks a lot. And when you get a guy who, like Quinn, was a head coach, I always like position coaches or coordinators that have had higher levels of experience before. Like we have a Paul Gunther here. We have a Zimmer who used to be a head coach. Now he's asked to do less. If you can run a team, like if I can run an entire store, it doesn't matter what business it is. If I can run an entire unit and then I'm asked to only run a portion of it, I'm obviously going to understand my position at a higher level and be able to perform at a higher level, because I've already been optimized to a point where I can run this whole thing if I needed to. You know what I mean? So asking me just to run my segment is like child's play for Zim. So that's why I think that the impact of what he just said there is like, it's important, because of the amount of experience that he has bleeding into just the defensive coordinator position. And it's been so long since he's just been a coordinator.
Bro, that was really impressive. You took that and turned it into some very insightful and eye-opening stuff, bro. That was impressive. Absolutely impressive, man.
Appreciate that.
Because I did not think about what you just I didn't even come close to thinking that, man. That was very impressive.
Appreciate that.
So
thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. So this part, this is something that we hit on earlier, but now Zimmer's going to talk about it when it comes to, inheriting the type of talent that he's going to have with this defense. So let's hop into it.
Whole deal.
You mentioned that you inherit a defense that's been really successful. Dan Quinn, the last 3 years, they've led the NFL in takeaways, in defensive touchdowns, in points off turnovers. They're up there in sacks. What is it in your mind that's missing that you can provide?
Well, I don't know, Ed. We're going to go about it, trying to put the players in the best position, and then go from there. Trying to continue to do the good things they've done. They've been a very pressure-based defense, which I love. They've got some really good pressure players. We've lost some good players too, but I think there might be a little bit of a mixture of pressure and coverage and disguise and things like that maybe can help us and maybe not get as many turnovers or all those. But, I think if you go back and look at my history throughout the time, there's been a lot of sacks, a lot of pressure, low scoring games, so that's really what we want to try and do is keep the scores down. And if we, get opportunities to get turnovers, interceptions, and sacks, and so be it.
Is there a real focus on the run defense, which
I think there was some stuff that we got to comment on there. First off, I want to say something about this with the turnovers. There's a lot of people who are, worried about, the Cowboys turnovers, they're not going to get as many turnovers. Well,
no, you won't need them.
But here's the thing though, right? I think that they can still get as many turnovers as they got this past season, because when we talk about, the turnovers possibly regressing with this defense this year, they already regressed from the previous 2 seasons when they led the league in turnovers. The previous 2 seasons, I believe in 2021, they had 33. In 2022, they had 34. This year, they only had 26. Those in 21 and 22, they led the league in takeaways. In 2023, they were 13th in the league in takeaways. So the takeaways, like the thing that Dan Quinn's defense is predicated on, he was above average in that particular aspect when it comes to that. So, and
Right.
on top of the fact that in 2022, Trayvon Diggs only had 3 interceptions, teams stopped throwing the ball to him. So,
Right.
that's just a level of context that I want to add, because I'm hearing like we're not going to get as many turnovers, and maybe that's the case, but we did regress in that aspect.
People, they think of things. It's good to do this sometimes, right? Depending, like if you're stressed out, yeah, it's good to compartmentalize and think of things in a vacuum, right? But when you look at turnovers and you say we're going to get less turnovers, that means you're being attacked less. Why? Because your coach is putting you in position where he's not gambling as much. Like he's putting it out there where he's like, hey, look, this is what we're running. This is how we're running it. And when he runs that too high safety look, you're not going to get as many targets. You're not going to have quarterbacks letting the ball go as readily because they can't assess what's going on. You get turnovers when teams think they know you, and then you bait them into doing something that they probably shouldn't do, and based off of your talent and your readiness for that particular play. But we also see it's feast or famine when you gamble. And so for every game that we had where we had a lot of turnovers, we also had games where we couldn't stop anything, like that Green Bay game. So taking it where you put a governor on that defense, where you put a lid on it, so to speak, and they can't just go off on you because they feel like it, you know what I mean? And they have to assess. Like I watched Aaron Rodgers against Zimmer's defense for hours, right? I watched several games of Aaron Rodgers having to play him. That was the benefit of having him in Minnesota for so long. It was like you get a lot of Aaron Rodgers footage. Aaron Rodgers did not play well consistently against Zim. And the reason being is it doesn't matter how good of a pre-snap quarterback you are. You don't, because everything looks the same. So when he talks about the skies, because everything looks the same, I don't care who you are. I watch a lot of film, right? And I don't know what's going on until after he snaps the ball, because everything looks exactly the same. So the same setup where I'll see Harrison Smith blitz off the edge, that same look where they're just double A gap pressure and he's standing off the edge of off the line in the box. That same look where he'll back up 5, 6, 7 times. Sometimes he's in coverage against the tight end. Sometimes he's in zone. Sometimes he's playing hook to flat. He'll blitz, but it looks exactly the same every time. So the quarterback has no way of knowing what's happening until after he snaps the ball. And that creates a quarterback that has to hold the ball longer than you would like. They would like. That creates more sacks that's why he said that we'll probably get more sacks, because he creates coverage sacks. That's the reason why Everson Griffith or Daniil Hunter may look better in his scheme than they would in another scheme, because you're looking at them as a guy who can get off the ball and just get a lot of sacks because they have a lot of sacks. But their sacks come from second effort or pressure or just straight hustle. That's why D-Law will look good or Sam Williams will look good, even though, pass rush move or quick beating their opponent, how fast they beat their opponent doesn't really matter, because he's going to buy you time with the fact that quarterback's going to have to hold the ball and figure out what's going on for at least a second or two. He's buying you that.
Yeah, perfect assessment there. And, when we talk about Micah Parsons being maybe the best pass rusher in football, he's going to get more sacks this year because of the fact that, Micah Parsons was getting the type of sacks that he was getting with teams being able to manipulate the Cowboys secondary the past few seasons, to be honest with you. Because my problem with the Cowboys defense was they had an identity, which was get turnovers. The problem is it's a volatile identity, right? We talk about it all the time. Turnovers come in bunches. And when that's your identity, now it's all right, we need to play in this spot. Hey, Deron Bland, go jump this route and try and get an interception. Oh, wait, they just ran a sluggo off this route. They ran a sluggo route, and now they're getting up the field and they have a 25-yard gain. That's why I didn't love that identity. And to me, it was never really like consistent. I thought Dan Quinn he was, that San Francisco game, and I'm sorry, the playoff San Francisco game where they held him to 19 points, where he was really utilizing his personnel. Like, he actually did a very good job utilizing his personnel in that game. I was just like, all right, like that defense, just, add a few pieces or two, which they did that season. Now we're good. And then they went into this year and it was just like, all right, like, what are we doing? Like, we have Leighton Vander Esch lined up as defensive end. Leighton Vander Esch is not going to line up as defensive end in Mike Zimmer's scheme.
Right. The reason that I look at a Dan Quinn and I was pissed is because the amount of experience that he has to do that, and lay that type of performance out there as far as his personnel usage and so on. To me, that was okay. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks. Sorry, picking up something from my sister. But yeah, so the reason that performance kind of pissed me off is because, like, I know the experience that you have, and but when they say he got lazy, I can understand that, because that's why you would keep certain guys on the field that don't need to be on the field. The reason Vander Esch and Kirsch are on the field is because they're the ones who understood his scheme the best, right? And they can communicate it the best. But in Zim's scheme, everyone knows their job to a certain degree, and they understand what they're supposed to be doing. I don't think that was the case in Dallas. I think we needed guys to kind of help guys line up, help guys get into position. We've even seen in that Arizona game where Kurtz tells Gilmore to play man, right, against a particular guy, and it was really supposed to be cover 3, but he told him to play man, and then that became a big play because Gilmore followed his man all the way across the field, and when they did that crossing route into what would have been Gilmore's zone, he wasn't there, but that was because Kurtz told him to play man right before. You can see Kurtz telling him because he didn't understand what he was supposed to be doing. Those types of things are the reason why, they were able to tie us in knots at times, because you knew you had to keep certain guys on the field at all times in order to run his defense. I don't think we'll have that problem with them. Everybody will know that you'll do your job. You'll know your job. Doesn't matter how talented you are, or you will not be on the field.
And one question that I want to ask you before we get back into this interview, there was something coming out of the defensive room where they were running their own stunts.
That is idiotic.
So describe to me in the audience why that is a terrible idea.
Okay, so right, based off of certain looks, I understand your tendencies as a player, as a team. Meaning, I'm scouting the Cowboys, and I want to know, based off of history, in film, when do they like to run stunts, and what sets do they like to run them out of? So when I see them in certain alignments, what are they doing, and when are they doing it, right? Once I understand that, right, that quarterback or that or that offensive coordinator understands what audibles and what checks to go into based off the looks that you're giving them. So if you're running a stunt and I'm running a draw or a gap run scheme right up the middle, and you have your nose tackle or 3-tech stunting out of the middle, right, because you're thinking pass, that's why teams like Green Bay used to kill us with Aaron Jones. Those slasher type backs would kill us, because if you have a smart quarterback that understands what's going on in front of him, he's just going to audible into something that allows them the advantage in that particular play. So what I'm saying is, you're not consistently getting any type of run fits from a team that stunts whenever they want to, because you don't they do it whenever they feel like it. It's not like a situational thing, or it's not like, hey, we want you to do it this much per game. It's whenever you want to, you can stunt. And when you have a team that doesn't know its job in the first place, meaning they're not staying in position to make plays, you got guys that are stunting off the edge, trying to get into the A gap, so they're giving up the edge, and then the guys behind them, like a guy like Clark or Marquise Bell, have to replace that. So if you stunt and you're D-Law and Jalen Smith had a great chemistry with this. You can go back to the Texans game versus that Texans game that made Jalen Smith famous for chasing down what's his name, Watson. Watson, yeah. Watch that game. whenever they stun it, whenever he stun it, you will see D-Law turn around to Jalen, and Jalen say, I got you, or he'll tap him on his hip to let him know that I have contained now. You can stunt inside. For the last 3 seasons, I've seen us do this so consistent, where pin and pulls only work on us. You know what a pin and pull is, right?
Yeah, you pin a
Okay,
defensive
we're
end
why
when you pull the
do you
guard.
think wide receivers are able to pin D-Law or Micah Parsons? You think a wide receiver can block Micah Parsons? No.
Hell no.
But the reason it works is because they're so hell-bent on stunting that a wide receiver will stand in the C gap, just stand there, and as soon as you stunt inside, they will just help you along. They help you get inside because that's where you want to go anyway, and there's no one replacing you as the contain guy on the second level or on the third level. No safety or linebacker is replacing you in that gap. If that's happening, you're going to get out to the edge and on those corners as a running back anytime you want. And then we're chasing the play instead of making the play. And you might have called the perfect play as a defensive coordinator, but now that line, the defensive line's integrity has ruined everything you've called because they've stunted out of position. So I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but that's what happens. Like you'll have guys that are in position to make the play from the start of the play, but they're willingly getting out of there for you. And I thought we got rid of that when we brought Quinn here, because that's what Rob Marinelli's teams were doing too. You know, I don't like it. I can't stand it.
Yeah, and like when you're stunning on rundowns, there is a good possibility that you're stunting like where one of the defenders is going, you're stunting exactly where the offensive lineman wants to move you to. And you kind of just did their job for them.
Yeah.
You know, like that happens a lot. And it's like when you talk about the pin pull, I don't think pin pull worked on any other team in the league more than it worked against Dallas. When teams wanted to run pin pull on Dallas, they ate us alive. Buffalo, Arizona, those teams ate us alive when they wanted to run pin pull. So, yeah, no, schematically, I just thought that, you know, last year there were a lot of breaks in containment and a lot of the stuff you were talking about with the stunts, but that was a great explanation. Let's get more into this interview.
Seemed to be the thing that cost Dallas at the end of the year.
you know,
Me.
you know, I don't know if you remember back, you know, so that's really what we want to try and do is keep the scores down. And if we, you know, get opportunities to get turnovers, interceptions, and sacks, and so be it.
Is there a real focus on the run defense, which seemed to be the thing that cost Dallas at the end of the year?
You know, I don't know if you remember back when I was my first game as a coordinator, we played the Eagles opening day, and it was the pickle juice game.
Yeah, I remember that.
The onside kick the first game. And that year, you know, I was coming secondary coach and said, hey, turn these guys loose, let them rush. And we gave up 220 yards rushing that day. So from that day on, there's always been an emphasis on stopping the run. And, you know, I think you can go back through the time when I was from here all the way through Minnesota that we've put a major emphasis on the run game and it being a priority to do that in order to rush the passer.
What did you think of Micah from afar, watching him? And then now I assume you.
So he was talking about the run defense there. I think they were getting into another topic there. It's you want to know what's funny? He talked about his first game where he's like, all right, I was a secondary coach, and then I wanted to turn these guys loose and let them get upfield and rush the passer. So he tried to do what Dan Quinn did his first game, and he was like, oh, this ain't going to work. And he adjusted right off the bat, you know. That to me shows, hey, I'm going to take self-accountability and realize that, hey, what I was trying to do here, it's clearly not going to work, and we're going to have to change some things. And maybe that game in particular scarred him. But, you know, you always see Mike Zimmer's defenses. They're always, you know, in a good way, bottom of the league in, you know, rushing yards and yards per carry, that type of deal. So, you know, I think Foote said it the best. There are a lot of people that believe that just run defense is sticking a fat guy in the middle of your defense and having him clog holes and get double teamed. And, you know, it's a lot more than that. It goes all the way from your linebackers being able to stay in their run fits, their defensive ends, keeping containment, slot corners, guys from the secondary staying contained as well. Or if you're a safety coming up and filling your gaps, you know, it's more than just, hey, we have a fat guy in the middle of our defense. We're straight. And like we saw that this year to where Jonathan Hankins was a good run defender, right?
Yeah.
But they were still they were still a bad run defense because of, a lot of times it was from the defensive end opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence. So that was the right defensive end,
And
if
you
I'm not
know what's
mistaken.
crazy about that being the problem all year is before the snap. I saw this back when Dontari Poe was here, and we said he was trash, right? Every guy that comes here is just trash. Nah. The reason that I looked at these guys and I said, well, how do you not know how to play with these guys? Before the snap, you already know two things are happening. Two, automatic. If they're running the ball, they're not running that D-Law at all. So let's just leave him over there. Why don't we shift and slide our linebackers away from him? Because we want to dare you to run at him, right? So we're not going to stack him up. We're not going to help him out a lot over there. Let him do what he does. So we dare you to run at our strength. We would shift to D-Law's side. And then when you're looking at Hankins, that's the second thing. They're not running at Hankins either. So they're either running at your 3-tech or they're running at Micah Parsons, right? What we would do, we would have Hankins, and now if you're thinking that way, why the hell would you ever have Hankins and D-Law lined up next to each other? They should be opposite each other, meaning it should be D-Law, Osa in between them as the 3, and Hankins shading the 1 or 0 on the other side of that, and then next to a Micah Parsons or whoever that smaller anchor is. So you know where they're running. You know exactly where they're going to go. They're going to run at Micah Parsons. They have to. So your linebackers should already be keying in on that, and so should your defensive line. We did not. We were not. And that blew my mind because it's like you know where they're going to run because they have to. They're not going to run at D-Law. And if they are, okay, let them. Let them do it. No problem. Great. That's your game plan? Do it. Let's see who wins.
And, bro, here's the thing, right? As a defensive end, I think that Micah Parsons is an average run defender. As a linebacker, bro,
he's exceptional.
I mean, we watched the film of that Miami game where, there were 2 plays in particular. He gets downhill, guard tries to get hands on him. He gets skinny, he gets through the gap, and he goes and makes a play. I think it was like a 1-yard gain. Then it was a 4th, or I think it was a 3rd and 1. And Micah Parsons is lined up at linebacker. He takes like 3 guys out. D-Law takes another 2 guys out. And who runs free? Damone Clark and Sam Williams on the backside run free. Yeah. They both get to the ball. And, it's a loss of yards. And now it's 4th and 5 instead of them getting the first down. So, like, when Micah Parsons is lined up at linebacker, he is an exceptional run defender. Like, one of the best run defenders in the entire league.
And he's still going to get you double-digit sacks from there.
And that's the thing, right? That's why I think it's so important that we get one of these defensive ends, Nealon or Williams, to really step up and make a difference this year. Because if they can, and you're able to rush, Lawrence, especially with now you're going to see more coverage sacks than you did previously. You have Lawrence rushing off the edge. You have Williams or Nealon rushing off the edge. And then you have Micah running up the A-gap. There is nothing more scary than a guy with the athletic profile that Micah Parsons has with his ability to rush the passer on a running back and coming through the A-gap. Like if it's Dexter Lawrence, that's scary. Don't get it twisted. But if I'm a quarterback, I'm like, all right, I can outrun this guy. You're not outrunning Micah Parsons. I don't care who you are.
How do you, shooting fish in the barrel is like, or fishing with dynamite, so to speak, is what it is. Because if you have 2 guys, if you have D-Law just containing, he doesn't even have to get upfield or rush. If he's containing or just, setting his edge, and then you have Sam Williams setting his, Micah Parsons firing off up in the A-gap is going to force a quarterback to run left or right or have to stay in that kill zone. So either Micah's going to get you or you're going to spill out to the left or the right, and they're going to get easy sacks. Those are like walk-to-me sacks for D-Law and Sam Williams. That's without them doing any pass rushing. If they're just playing the way Griffin and Daniil Hunter were asked to play, which is just don't let anybody get into the C-gap outside of you, keep everything inside, and then on plays where I call a stunt or I call a pass rush, do what I ask, you know what I mean? When you ask them to do, those guys to do that, Micah Parsons is going to create sacks for everybody playing in the middle of the field, including himself. So having it that way is much better. Like the pressures that he had, don't get me wrong, were great off the edge. But those near misses that turned into big plays, those near misses that could have been sacks and nobody else is on the field, now with him off the ball, if he's off the ball, you have an extra pass rusher that's on the field along with him on the field. That only helps you. It only helps you. And then from the run perspective, you don't run at him either. So if you're forcing everything to the middle of the field, which is what Zimmer does as far as the run game, he sets the edge and you have to run up the middle because he wants you to run at his defensive tackles. But if you have a linebacker like Micah Parsons behind that too, and you have defensive tackles that can soak up double teams, and Micah Parsons possibly running free most of the game or 50% of the game, he's untouched, that is a nightmare for any team. I don't care who it is. Micah Parsons being untouched in the run game or untouched on blitzes is crazy. It's crazy.
And you want to know what? One last thing to add to this is that, like, at the beginning of the season, there might be some guys that are just like, all right, this is a little different from Dan Quinn. You know, I'm not sure. But then when they see it's working, they're going to really buy into this scheme. And I think this is something that once this continues to marinate, this defense is going to be hitting its stride when you want it to hit its stride, which is the end of the season. I think you're going to get a defense full of guys that are bought in. And, you know, Mike Zimmer talked about it. He might have already talked about it in this interview, but, you know, he talks to guys differently, right? Like, he gets a gauge of where guys are. You know, there's guys where, hey, you need to get in there behind for them to perform. Like, when somebody messes up, hey, you know, get your head out of your ass. And then there's guys where it's just like, all right, you know what you did wrong. Yeah. I'm not gonna, you know, rip you a new one for that, you know, and they, you know, correct the mistake. So that's, you know, another thing with Mike Zimmer that, you know, it really gets me excited. I feel like there's going to be ultimate buy-in to where, like, you know, we heard some things. There were some things out there that, you know, Dan Quinn was a bit stubborn. And some of the players were just like, I mean, what's going on here? You know, so I don't think that's going to be the case with Zimmer. I think that, you know, the difference is, like, with Dan Quinn, when the sack numbers are high, people, you know, they feel great about themselves. They're like, oh man, we're getting upfield and we're rushing the passer. The sack numbers are going to be high, but it's just going to look and feel different for them.
Yeah, the way that, like I said, the way Zim's teams were getting sacks, they're not getting sacks because they had. Name me. You're going to say Daniil Hunter, probably only one, but other than that, and maybe I'll give you Geno Atkins, who can also stop the run. Name me a prolific pass rusher outside of those two under any Zim regime, not named DeMarcus Ware, and even DeMarcus Ware stopped the run very well. But where are the pass rushers that are just it's all about get off and get upfield? I mean, the Robert Quinn types. Because for everybody who talks about Micah Parsons being the greatest pass rusher in the league, right? And I'm not hating on him. He's not the best defensive end in the league. We don't need a defensive end that can get you 20 sacks, because that's what it seems like they're setting the standard on. Like, his level of success is based on, oh, did he get damn near 20 sacks this year? That doesn't matter. Robert Quinn, you would argue, is not better than Micah Parsons, right? But he got 20 sacks in a year. But did we want Robert Quinn setting the edge for us against the run? Hell no. Why? Because he can't do it. You know what I mean? So getting sacks alone can't be the litmus test for how well you're playing as a team or as a player or as a defensive end, especially because we've had players last year and every year Micah Parsons has been in the league. There's been defensive ends that have gotten more sacks than Micah Parsons. That's not what the litmus test is. It's, where are you the most effective overall? That's what we should be looking at. You know what I mean? And Zim doesn't go out there and just run guys out there. He never has pass rushers that are just pass rushers. That's the point in what I'm saying. He doesn't have any pass rushers that are just pass rushers on the edge. None. D Ware can rush the passer, but he can stop. You can't run over there either. You know, Daniil Hunter, he can rush the passer, but you can't run at him either. You know what I mean? Everson Griffith, when he was balling a little bit over there in Minnesota before he came to us, couldn't run at him either. You know what I mean? So when you have guys that can anchor versus the run and stop and rush the passer, that's what you're looking for in the edge. So that's why I say, like, to me, I don't see him looking at the film of a Micah Parsons and saying, I'm going to make you my 100 100% full-time edge guy. I don't see that. He'll be out there on third down in obvious passing situations, but he'll wind up getting more sacks this way, I believe. And the reason I think that is because he'll get his natural sacks that he's already getting, his 10 to 13 sacks that he's going to get every year anyway. But then he's going to get those opportunities by playing off ball. He'll get those opportunities where he's getting sacks from hustle as well. And that's what he wasn't able to get under Quinn, due to the fact that everything was built and run through him being like that guy. And we have so much talent on the team, you have to make it so that other guys are teed up as well. Because if you do that and you funnel all your traffic to Micah Parsons, meaning funnel all the run traffic to Micah Parsons, and you're forcing quarterbacks to step up into the A gap where you hopefully have Micah Parsons either spying or blitzing, or if he has if you make it a simple enough scheme for him where he's lined up on a tight end or a fullback, and you see that tight end or fullback or running back staying in to protect, hey, go blitz because he's standing there. You know what I mean? Go get him. You know what I mean? So having it where he's able to assess things that simple, he's going to cause way more chaos this way rather than just having it where he's on the edge and he already knows all you're doing is getting off the ball and pass rushing. To me, that's a waste of talent.
Hey, man. Hey, Akoya, I love the breakdowns, bro. I think it's very insightful, man. You're teaching me a lot here, man. But let's get further in this interview here.
Visit with him. Have you started to inform him? Hey, here.
You can go back through the time.
This is about Micah Parsons.
In Minnesota, that we've put a major emphasis on the run game and it being a priority to do that in order to rush the passer.
What did you think of Micah from afar, watching him, and then now I assume you've got to visit with him? Have you started to inform him? Hey, here are some ideas I have for you.
Not too much, it's all voluntary now, and we've communicated, but we've been putting together, the things that we want to use with him, and then when he gets here next week, we'll start implementing those things.
Will you be as creative with him as Dan Quinn has been?
I hope so. I think I'm pretty creative.
Will he be involved in the double A gap?
Well, here's the thing, and I want to make sure that, he's such an outstanding pass rusher, right? And getting to the quarterback and making negative plays, that if he's standing here in that A gap, that center's going to him, right? And so this guy right here is going to be in charge of the back. So there's going to be some times where, he'll be rushing from there. There'll be times when he's rushing there and, we're getting the protection turned the way that we want it turned, and we can get two on the back. So there'll be a lot of different ways that we'll be doing some of that. And sometimes he'll be lined up outside. Sometimes he'll be lined up somewhere back there. But we're going to move him around. Yeah.
How rare is his combination of speed and power? I mean, you've been around some really good ones. How does he stand out in that area?
Yeah, he's rare. Obviously, tremendous athlete. From what I understand, very, very smart. And and usually smart guys that have outstanding ability, their ceiling is so high that you can do a lot of things with them, because, they're going to know what to do and how to do it. And the other thing too that I think, I hired Greg Ellis, or Mike hired Greg Ellis to help with the defense and the pass rush, and Greg was the best I've ever been around, using his hands and setting guys up with rushes and things like that. So, our job is to try to get, in a lot of the games last year where they didn't play quite as good defensively, the offensive schemed Parsons a lot. The back was checking, and coming over here, or they got the two tight ends over there and they're both staying and all the protections turned that way. So our job is to, if teams are going to do that, number one, figure out a way how we can still use him where we want him. And number two, how can we use other people to affect those kind of protections? Because everybody's going to be aware of him, just like I talked about in the A gap. Everybody knows where he is. There's number 11, right? So we're turning the protection this way, and now how are we going to defeat that protection? And typically, when we started with the double A gaps and when I was here with Parcells, part of it was how can we attack protections, and it's getting a lot of the other players to understand, hey, this is where the protection's going now. you guys have one-on-ones over here, or, we have 3 one-on-ones with the back on this side. So how can we do that? And it's partly going to be their job to understand that, okay, we've got the slide going this way. We're man over here. What game are we going to run to affect those 2 players? Because it's 2-on-2 now.
Remember when Ellis started doing like jujitsu or something? Was that, I don't know if it was 03 or 04, but I imagine that even maybe helped some of the hands and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And if you see him walking down the hallway now, he's still doing stuff like this. You
Wax on.
You think
wax
he's
on.
talking to somebody.
Uh-huh.
But and I've had him come to training camp with me before, when I was the head coach. So I know what he can do, and the way that he teaches, and he's outstanding.
I thought he was like a movie producer, though. I guess he's now put that aside.
I don't know if he was a movie producer.
Yeah, he was involved in
that
that Carter High movie. Yeah, he was one of the producers on that.
All those pro guys are involved with a lot of stuff.
You mentioned that your background as a coach is
Okay, there we go. All right, so he said a lot there about Micah Parsons. Break this down, bro.
Man, well, it's great that he said it, because I hadn't seen this all, right? But that's basically what I was saying. Like, when you have a Micah Parsons on a running back, or you have him in the middle of the field, lined up off ball in the A gap, that's exactly what it does. Is like, it makes it so that you have an extra pass rusher on the field at the same time, but at the same token, you have Micah Parsons either lined up on a center who can't deal with Micah Parsons by himself. You have a running back dealing with him, because you don't know what Micah Parsons is doing. So if a running back's assigned to Micah Parsons, that's dead meat for the quarterback. If you have guys on the outside and all they're asked to do is either just keep the quarterback stepping up into the A gap so that Micah Parsons can eat, or have Micah Parsons collapse the A gap at times when he's blitzing so that he can spill out, that quarterback can spill out left or right. That's what I was saying. You get walk-to-me sacks for those other guys because they're dealing with one-on-ones. That's exactly what I mean. Same thing when he was talking about his stunts. His stunts are based on actual science, or actual scenario. He just said, like, how do we run a game? That's what he means when he says game, he's talking about stunt. But how do we want to run games to affect where we already know the protection is going to slide? Like I was saying, if Micah Parsons lined up over here and they're double teaming Micah Parsons, we should be shifting away from that. We know exactly, I just said that. We know exactly where they want to run the football. If D-Law's on one side, Hankins is on one side, Micah Parsons is all the way over there, we know exactly where they're running. So they shouldn't be able to execute that every time if you already know before the snap what they want to do based off where Micah Parsons is lined up. So it's great because I'm not in that locker room. I don't have his phone number, but all I have is just common sense and the film, and then understanding. For the fact that he's saying that, like, that to me just makes me feel good about where my assessment is, because if he's saying that, and that's what I feel anyway, that I know we're aligned, and I kind of understand what we're going to see come this season. I know what we're going to see because he's saying exactly what I think you should do with a Micah Parsons in the first place.
Absolutely. And like one thing he talked about his hand usage. I think that's something that we talked about before with Micah Parsons.
Micah doesn't use his hands.
Exactly. What are you seeing like on film when it comes to Micah Parsons and his lack of
it's
hand
scary
usage?
Because to get 13 sacks the way Micah Parsons is getting 13 sacks the hard way, using his legs, and running straight. He'll give you his chest, so he runs straight to contact, which is why a lot of people who bitch about Micah Parsons being held so much, I do know he is being held, but we know if you play football, you understand. If someone grabs you inside the collar here, right? If a lineman grabs you here, or grabs you underneath the chest pad here or shoulder pad here, it's legal. That's allowed as long as their hands are inside. That's legal. They don't call it until you pull away, until that guy makes a move and pulls away, and they can see that you're still grabbing t-shirt. But if you grab them up the collar or under the chest pad, it's legal as long as you keep your hands inside and you stay in front of the man's center. That would happen to Micah Parsons more than anybody else in the league. Not because referees hate Micah Parsons. It's because Micah Parsons will run right into your hands with his chest and allow you to grab him there. But the difference is he's so good, he would run straight through that contact in most cases and still get a sack. Just like you referenced that Miami game. When you look at the Miami game film on those run plays, he was getting double teamed by linemen. He ran through that and still made tackles. He did it in Washington when he was off the ball too. But he was getting held because he's running straight through their contact. They're just not strong enough to stop the strength that he has in his lower body. He runs straight through that contact. So if he could just understand how to keep guys away from his frame and keep their hands away from his chest, he would be even better. But right now, he doesn't do that at all. Not really. So if he's not doing that at all, and we're still talking about him as being one of the best defenders in the league, and he has that kind of flaw, which most defenders can't overcome that flaw because they're not as fast as him and they're not as athletically gifted as he is. So most linemen, if they're bad with their hands, they're just bad. You know what I mean? If you're a defensive end and you can't use your hands very well, you're probably pretty bad unless you're like Dwight Freeney or something. And you have like some gimmick move that makes it so that they can't really deal with you. But the greats all can use their hands very well. Micah Parsons already is considered great, and he doesn't use his hands very well. So that's not a knock on him. That's telling you this is how good this guy is really going to be if he just learns to do those things better and if he's schemed better.
And, bro, here's the thing, though, right? Like, when it comes to Micah Parsons, I think you and I are on the same page when it comes to this. Micah Parsons is the most talented defensive player in football. To me, he's the second most talented player in football behind Patrick Mahomes. Okay?
No, I have to disagree. Micah Parsons is the most talented football player right now in the league. He could, if you gave Micah Parsons a ball, he could play running back. If you want him to play receiver, he could probably do that. You know, you want him to play tight end, he can do that. Mahomes is the most talented quarterback in the league, but he can't do shit that Micah Parsons can do. You know, Micah Parsons just showed me now he might not be a great quarterback, but he just went through footwork drills with CJ Stroud and did pretty damn good. So he might not be a great quarterback, but I don't think any quarterback can be as good at any other position that he is. So Micah Parsons is the most talented player in the entire football league right now today.
That's fair. I didn't even think about it like that. That's a great point. You know, but like, all right, you know, Micah Parsons is the most talented defensive or the player overall in the NFL.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be having a conversation of like, all right, who's better, Max Crosby or Micah Parsons in terms of what they put on the field. We shouldn't be having that conversation.
Yeah. Max Crosby is not an apples to apples comparison.
No, it's not.
The thing is, Micah Parsons, you have to look at him like this. Positionally, what is his grade? Positionally, not player to player. Because if you try to player to player it, you can find players that are better than him at their position. Meaning, like, if you said, hey, is Micah Parsons better than TJ Watt at TJ Watt's position? Maybe not. But Micah Parsons can do the things as a defensive end stand-up outside linebacker. He's still an A player at a defensive outside linebacker, right? In a 3-4. As a defensive end, is Micah Parsons the best defensive end? So is he better than Bosa at defensive end? You can argue if you want that Bosa's a better defensive end. So Micah Parsons still an A-graded defensive end. At 3-tech, is he better than Osa at 3-tech? Maybe not for an entire game, but he's still an A-graded 3-tech when you line him up as a stand-up 3-tech. You know what I mean? Same thing at 0. As a linebacker, is he better than? They'll say, oh, he's not better than what's his name?
Fred Warner.
But Fred Warner is an A-graded linebacker. Micah Parsons would be an A-graded linebacker. The difference is what I just told you. Micah Parsons, if you ask him to be a Cam Chancellor, he would be an A-graded strong box safety. You know what I'm saying? If you ask him to play nickel corner, he would be like a C player as a corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no other player that can be graded as high in as many positions as a Micah Parsons. So to compare him to one player at one position doesn't make any sense because he's good at any position. So they're not. They're great at their position. It's a saying that I used to say, people used to say about me, right? Not to my own horn, but it's true. I used to think that it was a bad thing because I didn't know the whole thing. But this is true to Micah Parsons. And he's a Gemini, which is even crazier, which tells you why he's so good at every fucking position because he's probably a nutcase. Like, no offense to Geminis. My wife's a Gemini. My mom's a Gemini. My ex-wife's a Gemini. My uncle's a Gemini. So They
Yo,
are
I'm a
hurricanes.
Gemini too, bro. What you trying? No, I'm kidding. I'm
You
not.
a
I'm
Gemini
not.
too?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm
Oh
not.
damn! I was about to say Kendrick's a Gemini. You know what I mean? So, but I say this to say the saying is this: the jack of all trades is a master of none. I used to think that was bad because I didn't know the rest of it. But the rest of it is he's still always better than the master of one. You understand?
Yep.
So those guys may be masters at their position and may be better at their position than he is if he played at that one position. But he's better at multiple positions than they could ever be. So Max Crosby is not better than Micah Parsons because he can't go play 3-tech. He can't go play linebacker.
True.
But Micah Parsons can give you what Max Crosby's giving you, or some of it, most of it, as far as being a defensive end. Brant Warner is not better than Micah Parsons because he can't go play defensive end and he can't go play 3-tech or safety. But Micah Parsons can give you what Fred Warner gives you, or what Roquan Smith gives you. So there's nothing like him in the league. There is nothing.
No,
and I'll say this about one other player. The reason I say Izzy Mukwamu is the best defensive back on this team is the same reason. He can play inside, he can play outside, he can play single high safety, he can play box safety, he can play tight end eraser, man on third down safety if you want him to. By himself, he can do all of them, right? So that's how I assess talent.
No, 100% correct. But this is what I meant by that. With the way Dan Quinn used Micah Parsons, which is just, hey, go play defensive end all game. When you put it like that, Max Crosby is a better defensive end than Micah Parsons. That's the reason why I said that. But we know as an all-around player, Max Crosby is a better player. And that's the thing, right? I do think that some of this has to do with, how he was utilized over the past few years with Dan Quinn. But I also think that, we talked about, his lack of hand usage. If he'd get better with his hands, he'd be a better defensive end and even a better pass rusher than he already is. And that's where I think you and I are coming from and where we agree on this, where it's like, there's still things that this guy can tap into, and we want him to tap into that because we think he can ultimately be even better than he already is.
Right.
So let's get back into this Zimmer interview.
Is coaching defensive backs, and you inherit
movie. Yeah, he was one of the producers on that.
All those pro guys are involved with a lot of stuff.
You mentioned that your background as a coach is coaching defensive backs, and you inherit some pretty good ones here. Two guys in Trayvon Diggs coming off an ACL injury that cost him almost all of last season, and Deron Bland, a fifth-round pick who leads the NFL in interceptions. You have two guys who have led the interceptions the last 3 years. What do you see in what you can do with them?
Well, I think they've done a great job in the coverage part. It's been a lot of man-to-man stuff. I think Al's done a nice job. Al Harris has done a nice job with the technique of things, and him and I have talked about a lot of specific things. We're very similar on a lot of ideas as far as how we like to teach things, and he's been receptive of understanding my ideas, and I've been understanding of his ideas, and I think both of those things will lead to continually getting these guys better. And that's the only thing we want to do is continue to get them better. It's a luxury when you have two good corners. I think when you go back and again you look at the history, when I've had two good corners, we've played pretty good defense.
Who does Diggs remind you of, if anybody? I mean, his instincts and his ability to track the ball. I mean, obviously you coach Dion, and that's the name everybody's going to throw out. But is anybody else that comes to mind?
I don't know. He's big, and he's got obviously great athletic ability. But the thing that stands out about him, probably more so than anything, is he's got the best hands of any defensive back. He can find the ball and go get it and catch the ball in a lot of awkward ways. So, typically defensive backs have not quite as good hands as those guys. But I can't really pinpoint anybody. Obviously Dion had good hands, but guys have to get a ways up there before you're comparing them to Deion Sanders.
How the Cowboys were the last team to sign.
Okay, this is where we get in the meat and potatoes of the interview. I really like.
This is the meat and potatoes. After 2 hours, we get to the meat and potatoes.
No. It's just what he's been saying over the past like 5 minutes. It's like, damn, this guy is really leaning into it here. This is what I'll say. I don't think they gave Jordan Lewis enough respect. I think Jordan Lewis is going to be great in this defense next year. Jordan Lewis is a guy to me that is very versatile playing that slot corner position. I think he's pretty solid against the run, but I think he's a better ball hawk than people give him credit for. And I think he's better in coverage than people give him credit for. And I think that Mike Zimmer is going to do some great things with Jordan Lewis this year.
Oh, 100%. Jordan Lewis, to me, not even to me, just the film would speak to it. Like Jordan Lewis in college, his name was Velcro. Like that's how good he was at like press coverage and staying on guys. His rookie year, he had some spots where he shined, right? But he happened to be drafted by Chris Bouchard, I believe, who wanted taller corners. And he got the short end of the stick because he got beat in a Green Bay game. He stopped Devontae Adams once, right? And then they ran the same play right back at him, a back shoulder fade. They ran it twice at him, and he got beat to lose the game on that particular game. I don't think they've ever lined him up outside again after that game. And that was crazy because Jordan Lewis is a guy that we talk about him like he's just a nickel guy, but Jordan Lewis is a very good, very versatile corner as well. Very competitive too. Comes down, tackles very well. And there was something that stood out in his combine, which is also crazy. He did 22 bench reps as one of the more smaller corners, 22 bench press reps at 225 as a corner. That's pretty damn good as a corner. So he's very strong as well, is what I'm saying. Very strong. So I like Jordan Lewis a lot. I think he will shine in his defense. And then having it where he's not just we were only covering deep crosses because he has single high safety, and that's what beats a single high is deep cross. Well, when he's playing two high safety now, he's not going to have to deal with that as much. So he's going to get a lot more slants. He's going to get a lot more dig routes, a lot more hooks, a lot more out routes, a lot more opportunities, in my opinion, to make plays. It's very difficult to intercept footballs on deep crossers because really it's just a foot race between you and the receiver. It's about your speed and your leverage, and it's better to just be on the guy than it is to make a play on that ball. Because if you make a play on a deep crosser, we've seen him do it against the Raiders. That Raiders game where I think it was Zay Jones, somebody beat him for a big play, and they were coming at him. But I'm like, he was in great position, but he made a play on the ball. But on a deep crosser, if you cross that safety and that safety's playing the opposite hash of you, and you make a play on that ball and miss, it's a touchdown because there's no one else there. It's just you. You know what I'm saying? So that he won't see a lot of in this scheme, which will be good for all of us because that's the hardest, one of the hardest routes to cover, but at the same time, look at how good these guys are at covering it because that's all they had to cover. So, Bland is great at covering that. Diggs is great at covering that. And so is Jordan Lewis. They're great at covering those deep crossers, but they're not going to have to. Now they're going to get honest routes, people that are just doing comeback routes, stop routes, dig routes, slant routes. He's going to see more of the route tree now, which is great.
Yeah, and you want to know two other guys that I thought of, which is crazy because he spent this entire time talking about Trayvon Diggs in a lot of these parts. Two guys that I thought of was Kalen Carson and Eric Scott. I kind of started to write Eric Scott off, but when I heard Wanye Thomas talk about the way Eric Scott played in practice and how highly he thinks of him, that to me really hit a switch in my brain. I'm just like, so you have him under Mike Zimmer now and Al Harris, two guys who have been known to produce good talent in the secondary. He has all the traits. I think that, if they continue to give him a little bit of a shot, I think in preseason, people were kind of bought out or sold out on Eric Scott. Even though he was a young player, I thought it was crazy to do it. But I thought, now that Dan Quinn's not here, maybe he lost his sponsor in the room. But I think under Mike Zimmer and, Al Harris, if he buys into what Zimmer's doing, he has all the traits in the world. That's a guy that could potentially have some development. And we already know about Kalen Carson and how highly we think of him coming out of the draft, perfect Mike Zimmer corner. And again, he's, it's kind of like, fuck this team, but when the Eagles draft an offensive lineman, they get him in a room with Jeff Stoutland, and he produces really good offensive linemen. I look at Al Harris in the same way that people look at Stoutland. Like, I think he's one of the best position coaches in football. And I think you get guys with traits under Mike Zimmer who wants to coach a certain type of way. And I think that you'll get better results from those guys.
Yeah, I mean, you could have said all that just by saying this. Let's go down the list. Wanye Thomas, undrafted guy who we think very, very highly of. He played under Al Harris. He looks great. Marquise Bell looks so great. We try to find a way to put him on the field in other places. You know what I mean? Hooker, he plays so good that we don't even say his name. We forget he's on the team. You know what I mean? And he's great. You know what I mean? Izzy, one of the best defensive backs on this team, if not the best defensive back on this team, doesn't even play at all. You know what I mean? You got Diggs and Bland, Jordan Lewis. Like, the secondary is stacked. I don't know if it's the best in the league, but I would argue that it's arguably the best secondary in the league as far as the depth. You might have people that are better at one position or another, but the depth is there, and that says a lot. So when you're putting a guy like a Carson and a Eric Scott with Al Harris, I've seen what he's done with the rest of the room. I don't have a doubt about any of those guys, because if you have talent and you come play for Al Harris, he's going to show you how to use that talent to your advantage, and you're going to be even better. So Carson, I saw big paws in the pup. I think I like what he is already. And Eric Scott, I actually liked his film in college. His film, even in the league, is like, when you're asked again to cover deep crossers and you're not accustomed to that, you see what you saw in the preseason where he was getting beat on a couple plays and you looked, kind of like a fish out of water. But I give you that when you're a rookie and the lights are there, lights, camera, action, it's time to go. But when you have a guy that has a full year under Al Harris, he had a full year under him, he understands what this team is looking for. And now we're doing nothing but adding help to him. Like, we're giving him help with those safeties now being asked to play too high and over the top sometimes. So if when you have safeties playing too high and over the top, your corners are able to sit on routes, or when they know they have inside help, they're able to jump certain routes. That'll make corners more aggressive because they know they have someone behind them at all times. So I don't think that there's going to be a problem with Scott or Carson. They probably don't make the field very often this year unless there's injuries, because they have so much talent ahead of them, in my opinion, on the depth chart that should play over them at this point.
And, like, when we talk about Wanye Thomas, I think he's going to get a ton of reps this upcoming season. Wanye Thomas is another guy, like, when you talk about one of the best defensive backs on the team, he fills a lot of roles for this team as well. That Giants game, I could make a case that he was the best player on the team that game.
Yeah.
You talk about blocking a field goal. There was a play, I think it was a third down. He was guarding Darren Waller.
Shut down Waller twice.
And then there was another play. He was playing in the middle of the field. Waller was on a slant. I forget exactly who was covering Waller, but he had inside leverage on a slant. Wanye Thomas comes up, disrupts that route. Daniel Jones has to step up in the pocket, and then he ends up coming up and making a play on the ball there. Ends up tackling Daniel Jones on that play. So, it's just things like that I see from Wanye. Very heady player. And that's something that really works in a Mike Zimmer defense. And that's a guy that I look at this year to take a big step up in this. And honestly, to even say step up, like, it's not even from a talent or mental standpoint. Wanye Thomas was really good. He just didn't get the opportunities because we wanted to put Jaron Kearse on the field.
That's a fact. Wanye Thomas was one of the biggest mismanagements of talent on this team too. Because he was better than everyone in the safety room other than probably Izzy.
So he talked a lot about Diggs in this particular part of the interview. Is there anything you wanted to comment there on anything he said about Diggs?
His ball skills are ridiculous, but he'll set up ways. He'll find ways to get Diggs engaged. What he did say was like they were all. He think they did a great job as far as technique because they were all in man-to-man a lot of the time by themselves though. When you're running single high, if they are going after you, like, so if that safety cheats opposite you and you're a corner in a single high look, you're really one-on-one on an island by yourself. You don't have any help. So for Diggs and Bland, for all the things they say about Bland, right? They try to talk about the way he. It's funny that both years when Diggs led the league in interceptions and now Bland did, both years they start talking about the way.
Oh, did we lose him here? He'll probably be coming back in a second. He'll be coming back in a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, someone called me. My bad.
No, you're good, bro.
Both years they were talked about like they were not great at coverage, but they're one-on-one all year, all season long. One-on-one. There is no help. When they miss, the reason it looks so bad when they miss, because there ain't no help back there. Ain't nobody
Yeah.
behind them. So if they miss, the times where they do miss, the 4 or 5 times a season where they miss on an assignment, it looks horrible because there's no help. You know what I mean? But those situations, the reason there's going to be less in.
Oh, he might have got another call. Yeah, one thing I'll add into this before Okoye hops back on is that like a big reason why I think this defense is going to take a step up next year is because I think that Mike Zimmer is going to get more out of these players than what Dan Quinn got, right? So if every single one of these guys is playing better than what they did last year because they're being put in a position to be better than they were last year, you're going to get improvements from pretty much every player on the defense. That's going to make your defense better, right? Even if you don't have the type of personnel. Okoye, you're back. Yeah, no, I was saying while you were gone, you know, this defense is gonna. I think it's gonna take a big step forward because with Zimmer, he's gonna be putting people in positions to. I think he's gone. He'll come back in. Yeah, no. So from that perspective, like coaching is a big thing. Like it's not a small thing. Like the addition of Mike Zimmer, I look at it as like the addition of a big free agent because if he's going to make your players better because of how he schemes things up, I think that ultimately, you're going to get a better defense from that. Especially Izzy's such a talent that was for some reason totally wasted. Izzy's still on the team. Izzy's still on the team, so that's going to be another guy. I'm very interested to see how he uses Izzy, right? Like when we talk about potentially losing Stephon Gilmore, maybe he goes and signs with another team. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. I'm not tripping about that, to be honest with you. It looks like Okoye's back. Cool. Yeah, no, what I was saying while you were gone is that when it comes to Mike Zimmer, one thing that I was talking about is you're going to see improvements from pretty much everybody on the defense because they're being put in a position to succeed. Granted, I think they're going to do a better job putting these guys in a position to succeed. So if you're getting better production from pretty much everybody on the defense because of how they're being schemed, you're going to have a much better defense and a defense, honestly, that can carry this team come playoff time because I think that Dak has the capability to be like a Joe Burrow was in the playoffs where that defense was playing at such a high level. They just needed to score 17 points and they were going to win big games. Like they almost won the Super Bowl that year and they scored 17 points.
Yeah. Well, you heard him say, it kind of went over people's heads when Zimmer said,
I know what you're talking about.
A bunch of low-scoring games. You might get less turnovers, but they're going to be a bunch of low-scoring games. And the reason he said that is because when you're just stopping the run, you're kind of – a good defense is also understanding how people are going to scheme you. You're watching guys on your team. They're consistently in position. When guys are scouting you, they see they're consistently in position for certain things. They're always ready for certain things. So guess what? An offense doesn't try certain things against you. So that's even more defense. It's like you don't have to stop the pin and pulls when you stop the pin and pulls consistently enough on film where teams just don't even bother to put that in the game plan for the week. They decide to attack you differently, So that's what he brings as well. Teams can't attack us. They can't use last year's film and they can't attack us the way they did last year, which is going to be huge. They might find different ripples. Maybe these guys have to learn to communicate certain things a little differently due to the nuance of it, but they won't be able to do what they did to us last year.
Absolutely. So let's get into this next part of the interview here.
The Cowboys were the last team to sign an unrestricted free agent from another team, and that player is Eric Kendricks. For you, played with you, a linebacker in Minnesota for a number of years. How important is having somebody who can help these players learn your system from experience?
Yeah, I think it's been great because Eric has been through it. He can help the younger guys. We go out here and we do walkthroughs and stuff like that, and he's on top of things. He can make all the checks and things, and understands the coverage part of things, the pressures. He understands those, and so I think that piece has been really integral in getting this. These, especially the other guys, communicating the front guys when we have to move a front or adjust things. He's really good at that.
Do you need to get bigger at linebacker? They had a safety last year playing linebacker, but I thought back about Coakley and Dat. They weren't exactly the biggest linebackers, and they played extremely well. How you kind of evolved on that, and how do you view that position?
Well, I think first off, we're going to try to have at least 2 linebackers in there all the time, and sometimes 3. So, a lot of things the offense is doing now with some of the jet motions and that, they're trying to get nickelbacks into run fits. And so, now you got a DB in a run fit, and you got another DB in a run fit. You're just not as physical as you need to be. And so, we'll have deals where most of the time we're going to have at least 2 linebackers in the ball game. And as far as getting bigger, Kendricks isn't the biggest guy in the world, but he's instinctive and he makes plays, and he flies around to the ball. So, but yeah, I mean, football is a big man's game. So the more that you can get that, but in today's game they still have to cover in space, and so you have to find linebackers that can cover in space, or they have to be able to add things in the pressure package.
What did you like about Marist? We got to talk to him.
So, man, one thing that he talked about was defensive backs and run fits. Explain why that's just such a horrible idea.
I mean, common sense, man. It's like he said, it's a big man's game. So if you have a guy like Jordan Lewis, who did a great job in the run, though, he did, but or even Marquise Bell or any of those guys, when you have those guys having to deal with guards that are pulling full speed out on the edge, or tight ends that are trap blocking or pulling out on the edge, and that defensive end is pinned inside, and those linebackers are trapped inside, and they're undersized and can't shed a block anyway, you're creating a funnel directly to your corner or your safeties. You know what I mean? They're making tackles, yeah. Like, everybody was mad in that Buffalo game, like, oh, yeah, Wanye kind of failed on a few of those run plays. Wanye shouldn't be the guy that we're funneling all of our run traffic to, though. It doesn't make any sense. So I remember where they used to do it sometimes in Dallas when Zimmer was still here, with Terrence Newman versus Brandon Jacobs. Like, the Giants, they would run sweeps with Brandon Jacobs. And damn well they weren't running a sweep because they thought they were going to get yards out of it. They were running a sweep because they were hoping to get Brandon Jacobs on a corner a couple of times a game so he can beat those guys up, so that your wide receivers can have some success later on in those games, right? Same thing we did with Marion Barber when we run him out on the edge. We're just trying to get a hat on one of those corners. So when that is your scheme, when you as a defensive team are saying, let's get hats on our own corners on purpose, that's not a very wise scheme, in my opinion. Doesn't make much sense. Because it's not hard, it's not hard to out leverage a corner that weighs 180, 190 when you have a guy 250 or 300 pounds running at him.
Yeah, no, 100%. I everything you say, I flat out agree with there. He talks about Eric Kendricks, adding him to this defense. And when we talk about last season, right, the Mike linebacker was Damone Clark, right?
Right.
Who do you trust more as a Mike linebacker, getting guys where they're supposed to be, communicating on the defense? Damone Clark or Eric Kendricks?
Eric Kendricks, obviously. I mean, that's an easy question, man.
Yeah.
Eric Kendricks, obviously. Hold on 1 second. I'll talk to my brother.
Oh, no. Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, no, like that's a big thing, right? So if you get better communication on this defense, which I think will be much more improved, I think that alone, again, it's all about the small details when it comes to this team, in my personal opinion, right? This team had everything you wanted, right? When it came to edge rushers, defensive tackles, cornerbacks, safeties, they have all the pieces on this defense. Now it's just all about the small details that are really going to make a difference. One of those things being communication. It's not even really a small detail, it's a big detail that's just been lacking in this defense. Even when like Van Der Esch was not on the defense this year, like you did see a big step back from it, even though Van Der Esch, we all have our opinions about Van Der Esch. I do think
that's how bad communication and then a scheme. The scheme wasn't even that difficult. We ran the same 3 plays over and over again. So it means like you're not even teaching these guys. They're not learning or developing, because if the only reason you have Van Der Esch on the field is that he's cheap and that he knows the plays, that's pretty bad. That means you're not coaching these guys up to speed where other people know what they're doing. They should know by now. It doesn't take that long in any other scheme. You have rookies that jump in and play linebacker at the mic for multiple teams every year, right? So if you can't develop a player well enough to the point where he understands his playbook and he understands the scheme, and don't give me that he didn't do very good on the what's it called, the Wozniak or whatever that test is, or his IQ is. Don't give me that crap.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he played football his whole life. Even if you're telling him, hey, in these situations, this is what you want, in these situations, this is what we want, and make it so that he at least understands something. That's bad development, because LV was not the guy. Even though he was the green dot guy, he was a smart guy. He wasn't the guy at the point of attack. So to keep running that out there lets you know that we weren't developing anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that going back to Micah, like him playing more at linebacker, when you talk about point of attack, getting downhill and at the point of attack, Micah might not be great with his hands as like an edge rusher, but he's still probably pretty good with his hands as a linebacker. He's still probably
As
one
a
of the better.
linebacker, he's excellent with his hands.
Absolutely.
And as far as block shedding is concerned, he sheds blocks with the best of them. He sheds blocks better than I think I would argue any linebacker in the league, because I don't see very many linebackers in the league getting double teamed when they're playing off ball. When Micah Parsons plays off ball, they still double team him in the run game. If anything, he's supposed to have a defensive lineman in front of him taking one of those guys off of him, or both of those guys off of him anyway. But when Micah Parsons, all of his best run fits that we have this year, if you go back and look at the film, we're coming through splitting double teams. Roquan Smith is not splitting double teams to get to the ball. Fred Warner is not splitting double teams to get to the football, and still not only getting to the football, but not getting to it 7 yards downfield. He's getting to the football in the backfield, splitting double teams. So that is how good he is off ball as a linebacker with his hands. He's ridiculous. Well, if you put him in a scheme where he doesn't have to do that and he is able to kind of run free, so to speak, like I said, that's scary. That's scary. So a lot of the things that people are asking for, I'm asking for the same. They think that we're disagreeing when I say where Micah should play. We're not. I'm saying, how crazy would this guy look? How great would he look if you made it so that he had to deal with a running back or a tight end only as far as shedding blocks, or maybe a pulling guard here or there, but for the most part, no one's getting bodies on him. He's getting at defensive end, he's getting a body on him almost every play. If that's rare and you're making it so the 30% of the game they actually get to him and they're actually able to get their hands on him, that means 70% of that game he's disrupting. Because if you don't touch him, you can't get your hands on him, he's going to be very disruptive in your run game. You're not doing shit.
Yeah, you did a great job summing that up, man. That's perfect. I 100% agree. Let's get back, see what they have to say next.
Find linebackers that can cover.
Oh, this is about Marist Leofau.
To add things in the pressure package.
What'd you like about Marist? We got to talk to him a little bit today. What stood out about him? Because I'm sure he fits kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, number one, he's brilliant. He catches on really quick. Almost, he wants to be so good, so intense that I think he wants to be. He almost is like too much at it right now. But it's the first day. So, but the other thing is, I think he's a really good pressure player, and I think having that with Parsons and another pressure player that is a linebacker, or he can move somewhere else, and Parsons can move somewhere else. I think those pieces add to kind of confusion more for the offense. Plus, he's a pretty good rusher.
How would you describe your coaching style?
Yeah, this is another good one, right? Like we talked about it, I think last week I was texting you. I think right off the bat, Maris Liufau is going to play a role in this defense. When it comes to pass defense, put him in that double A gap. The two things that you're doing as a linebacker in passing situations in that double A package, blitzing the quarterback, dropping back in coverage. Those are two things that he does at a very high level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like when people talk about we should have drafted a running back, it seems like they love this guy, Maris Liufau. And I think that there's substance behind it. Like there is something to be said about, potentially having a future Mike linebacker for this team. Like now, if Mike Zimmer is going to be here for multiple years to come, he's being groomed into this system by Eric Kendricks and by Mike Zimmer. And you could potentially have a Mike linebacker for years to come in Maris Liufau.
Right. Like I said, I like him. He has, like I said, Fred Warner traits, because he's a guy that can be at the line of scrimmage, do his job, his initial job, but still be disruptive on the back end of a play. You'll see if you want me to give you an example as to like what that looks like. Go to the game that we played, San Fran, where Fred Warner won the interception that he had in the playoffs. Right, he covered his man, and then he followed Dak's eyes back over to Ward. Ward pops the ball up, he intercepts it. He did the same thing last season when we played him with the interception. And then there was a play where he got a sack on Dak that he shouldn't have got. The reason he got the sack was they tried to do a rub route in front of him. He jumps in front of the rub route, disrupts that route altogether, like just makes it so there was a traffic jam. Dak had to pull away from the initial read and float to his left. When he did that, Fred Warner flows off of that route and then runs and goes and sacks Dak and gets a coverage sack, basically, right? But he set up the coverage sack with the coverage that he did to disrupt the rub route in the first place. Morris does those types of things on film. You'll see him cover his guy up the seam, peel off of that, and come make a hit on a dig route that's developing underneath him. So he has like a sixth sense for what teams are trying to do underneath him or where they're trying to move him so that they can have success in the pass game. And he does that pretty well there. And he also does well coming forward and spying. I saw him do a lot of things very well at a very high level. So for him to be here, when you say, hey, we need a running back, I don't listen to our fans anymore. I don't.
I don't
The
either.
reason I don't is the same people who say, hey, we need a running back, are the same people who say, well, running backs aren't that viable anymore. When we're talking about Zeke or TP, it's like, well, the running back position isn't even that valuable anymore. Well, now we need a running back like it's a premium, right? So it doesn't even make sense. The consistency and the arguments don't make sense, especially coming from our own fan base. So I don't listen to that.
Yeah.
Should we have gotten a running back? Maybe. But if you say, hey, I liked last year, we loved Rico. This year we got Rico, Zeke, and Royce. I'd say if you say, hey, is Rico, Zeke, and Royce better than TP, Rico, and Deuce? I'd say yeah, to me. So
Hey.
I think we got better in the running back room, and then we got better up front of those guys with BBL Drizzy. You know what I mean? So we're good. We're good.
Hey, and here's the thing, right? Bro, I went back and I watched some of Deuce Vaughn's runs. When he got to the outside, completely different player than when they wanted him to run on the interior. Completely different player. If you get Deuce out in space,
he can run anywhere you want him to run if you block for him.
Yeah, facts.
Make
Facts.
it so that he
100%.
doesn't have to make jump cuts as soon as he gets the ball, and maybe he could run the ball better if you made it so that if a running back gets the ball and immediately they're cutting, making guys miss. I mean, they might make a play there, but that means the line is not doing a great job.
No, 100%. So, I'd be interested to see him in this room with the type of personnel that we have, but that's a different conversation for another day. This next one I think he's talking about is coaching style here. So I'll rewind just a little bit here. Boom.
Or else I think those pieces add to kind of confusion more for the offense. Plus, he's a pretty good rusher.
How would you describe your coaching style and how it's evolved over time?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ed. I've never been. I guess the biggest thing is, we're going to have to see how I am after 2 years. I feel very comfortable with what I'm telling the players and how I'm telling them. We had a walkthrough out here the other day, and I wasn't as pleased with how it was going, and I let them know. So, I'm demanding, I guess, as far as how much I've changed from the time I've been here to then. I can't tell you yet. It's going to happen, during the course of preseason, the games, and and go from there. But I got a job to do, and to get these players to play the best that they possibly can play, be as disciplined as they possibly can be, and play together as a team. So we have to get guys understanding their roles and what is asked of them to do. And I don't know if I've said this in other press conference, but one of my big sayings all the time is do your job so someone else can have success doing theirs. So you might not like taking on this double team, but that's your job. And this guy, because you're doing it, has got an opportunity to make some plays. And next time, he's going to help you make some plays. But that's how it all works together, whether it's corners and safeties or defensive line and linebackers or whatever it is.
You said you've actually like whispered to player, like some guys that didn't like getting called out in public. You change your style. Okay, I don't remember that, Zimmer, but so you kind of put your arm around the guy, and
there's several guys that have been like that. I don't ever remember really getting after Darren Woodson or Deion Sanders. I don't, there'd be times on the sideline I'd say, what the heck are you doing here? It's like, or things like that, but it's never really, and I'm hard on the rookies. There's no question about it, because I feel like you have to train them first, to make sure that you're demanding, because, it's like having little kids. If you let them get out of hand, then they're going to continue to get out of hand. So, but yeah, I had one guy that just probably had several. That, you had to just coach him and understand. And, I'd walk up to him and say, hey, try it like this time, do it, just wait here and then kind of work your way down and things like that. But as long as guys are understanding and trying and want to be coached, I got no issues with that. And, will there be times I get mad? No doubt. But each guy is different. I think that's what teaching and coaching or whatever it is.
Generally speaking, do great players like to be coached hard?
They like to be coached. And I still think they're all different a little bit. Harrison Smith is a great player, for Minnesota. Had him for a long time, and he'd miss a tackle, and I'd just give him a look, and but he knew more than he knew when he played.
He knew he
bad.
failed.
Yeah, he knew he played bad or something like that, or he made a bad play on something. So I didn't need to bang it into him. He already knew. So, but those guys get a little bit more freedom because they know what they can do and what's expected of them, and that's what the great players do.
What are you and Mike's relationship now?
Oh, did you hear all that?
Yeah, I heard it all.
Okay, cool. Because I didn't even realize that you were out of the room. My bad.
Yeah, I was gone.
Okay, got you. Yeah, no, a lot of really good stuff in here as well. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Like, discipline was a big problem with this defense, and it looks like that'll be a lot better under Zimmer.
Yeah, 100%.
And he talks about, 100%. And he talks about, players being coached, right? There are a lot of people around the league who think that Mike Zimmer is just a guy. And I don't care what they think. I'm just, trying to relay a message to the fans here. Mike Zimmer is not a guy who's just going to yell at every single one of his players and act like they're not different type of people and act like, certain
No.
people don't respond different to certain things. Like, that's not
Right.
what Mike Zimmer is. There's going to be guys where Mike Zimmer is going to rip him a new asshole, but that's because he gets the best out of them because he talks to them like that. And then there's going to be guys where, hey, look, I don't have to tell you that you screwed up, but you screwed up here, and they kind of just get it. They hold themselves accountable. And, I think that's very important when it comes to coaching where, not every player is the same. Not every great player wants to be coached hard. Every great player wants to be coached, but you got to coach them differently. And, that to me, it spoke volumes. And on top of the fact that, he talked about it, he's like, hey, I didn't like the way we were practicing the other day. And I let him know about it. That's exactly like what I want to hear because, granted, I wasn't at the practices. I'm not on the team, but just the way I look at Dan Quinn is he's not a guy, he's more of like an uncle type of coach to where, he's everybody's best friend. Mike Zimmer, he's not trying to be your best friend. He's trying to be your coach and he's trying to win football games and better your life because he's putting you in a position to succeed. And because you're succeeding, you can go get a contract from the Cowboys or you can go get a contract from somewhere else. So that to me, I would much prefer a coach that understands the assignment, understands that this is a job at the end of the day. And if I'm, let's just say in the high school ranks, if you're putting me in a position to succeed and I'm putting good tape out there and now colleges are approaching me about scholarships, I would prefer that much more than a coach who's my best friend that isn't getting the most out of me. And now, the quality of school that I'm trying to go to isn't on the level of what it would be if I had better coaching.
Yeah, a thing about me is this, right? And I was very, very like weird as a youth, man. I had very high marks, high test scores, could pass classes without really trying, right? I would fail my easy classes, meaning if there was a teacher that was passive aggressive, kind of shy or nice, too nice, I would fail shit like gym because I just wouldn't go to gym. You know what I mean? Because I didn't care about the teacher. Or I would fail health. Or I would fail any class where there was a teacher that was just a pushover. I would fail. The assholes, I would excel. Like the hardest class, the class that everyone else says I'm going to get an F and are scared of the teacher, I would pass those. Why? Because I know what's required and I know where I stand because they're not bullshitting, right? That says a lot. Like same thing with any job I've ever had, any business I ever done. I like no men. I like people who will tell me they don't like me to my face or tell me they don't like something I'm doing straight up because then I understand where I stand and I know how to perform in that environment. I've always done well there. And I think that says a lot about grown men who are playing the sport of football. They need to understand where they stand and they need to understand what is the requirement. It's a reason Bill Belichick is called an asshole, but he was so successful. It's a reason Bill Parcells was so successful, but he was a charismatic asshole, right? He punched Sean Payton in the face on the sideline by mistake one time. You know what I mean? So it's like that type of shit. You know what I mean? So when you have a guy that tells his lineman, "Hey, you get in another fight and you lose, I'm gonna send you back where I got you from." You know what I mean? So that's what you tell a Sam Williams, like, "Oh, you want to keep getting in fight? You get in another fight on this team, you're out of here. Like you're cut. I'm not gonna talk to you. You're cut. Get another fight." You know what I mean? You need to hear that sometimes. Those things were not being said by Dan Quinn. He might bench you and might not like bury you on the bench like he did Izzy Mukwamu, but to me, when you're burying a guy for an explosion of passion, I think you're kind of tampering with some of the things that make him successful. I want the passion. I just want it to be controlled. And I'm a coach myself. I don't mind you going crazy and doing certain things if you're boxing or you're fighting. I don't mind it. I want to know, is that something that's controllable by you, though? If it's not, then I need to learn how to wield it into a way that makes us win. If it is controllable, though, I need you to fucking control it. That's it. So
Yeah.
that's the way he is. I like Zimmer a lot because of that.
And hey, bring out that bring out that passion when it needs to be brought out, right? Like in your instance as a boxing coach, when somebody's on the ropes, give them hell, knock the motherfucker out. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of the thing here, right? Like, all right, 3rd and 13. We need to get off the field. Micah, let that shit out and go get the quarterback. You know, in certain situations, let it all out. Like, let it go. You know, so yeah, you make a great point there. Let me see here. Okay. I think we're getting close to the end. This isn't a full 60. They got him, I think, for like another 5 minutes on here.
Because they know what they can do and what's expected of them, and that's what the great players do.
What do you and Mike's relationship now that you knew each other, and I think you'd obviously become friends in the same division, but working together every day, spending a lot of time together? What's that been like?
Yeah, I don't know that we're friends in the same division. In the same division, we weren't really friends.
Yeah, I thought personally maybe.
But you
had
talked
been
about
able
that your team gave him the hardest time.
Yeah.
He's an offensive coach. He's
very
calling the plays.
complimentary.
You're calling the plays on defense, and you guys gave him the hardest time.
Yeah, and they gave us the hardest time too. That when I came in there, they were the team you had to beat, and fortunately we beat them a few times, and they beat us a few times. But no, it's been great. We sit down and talk about football and schemes and life and all different things. He's really involved obviously with the whole team, but we have opportunities to sit down and just talk about, hey, do you remember this play or that play, or you're seeing teams do this now or that. So no, it's been great.
What was your draft experience like? Has a general manager changed at all in the draft?
You want to comment on anything with the McCarthy comments?
No.
Okay, cool. We'll keep it pushing.
Nope, it's been the same since I was here the last time. Coaches have a lot of input. Scouts. I should say this. So of all the places that I've been, and not to take anything away from anybody else, these guys do a tremendous job in the draft room. The analytics, talking about his play speed, talking about who he kind of correlates to, all that. I think they do an outstanding job. And I'm not saying this because I'm here. I'm telling usually what I tell is the truth. So, but the scouts have a lot of input. They're not afraid to disagree on guys. The coaches have a lot of input, and then obviously Jerry and Steven will sit in there and we'll talk about it, and they listen, and then obviously they make the decision. But along with Mike. So no, I'm telling you, it's as good as I've ever been. And in Minnesota, we had a really good system and did things the right way, and Cincinnati. But this is the most in-depth, involved draft process that I think I've been in.
What kind of job has Tad done?
Shitty.
Because here you are
today.
Right, he didn't shield you from this properly.
It was great until now.
By the way, being a grandfather, you mentioned it. Like how cool is that? And then to be here, get to be around them more.
Yeah, I see. I see them almost every night now.
Wow.
They come over to the house, and they're wild little buggers. But it's been fun. Yeah, it's been fun to be able to see my other daughter and both the daughters. But that part's good. Dallas has always been a great place. I always thought that I might end up coming back here and living someday, regardless of where I was, because my kids were all growing up here, and so it's always been kind of home to me anyway.
Mm-hmm. What do they call you?
Papa.
Okay.
Papa, thanks for doing this.
Papa, I want some money.
You're old enough to ask for money?
No, I'm kidding.
They're
My grandson bets me steps every day.
I gave my one day there. I was over at their house.
Yeah, that's pretty much the end of the interview there. They just start talking about some other stuff. Was there anything you wanted to comment on from any of that last part of the interview?
I mean, the draft analytics, we kind of knew that because the Cowboys do so well in the draft. Like, they're a team that's built on the draft. So it doesn't surprise me that they're so adept at analyzing players. Then when you look at their fan base, the fans analyze players and the the fans of the analyzers analyze players, and then you know what I mean. So this is a very educated, to a certain degree, very educated fan base. A very educated fan base. Sometimes
You
they're
know,
too smart for their own good, though.
one thing that I will say is, you know, to talk about the drafting part, and then we'll get into just what we thought about the interview in general. I
I got
think that.
about 4 minutes for you. I'm at my daughter's school. I'm about to
Oh,
pick her
okay,
up in
okay.
about 4 minutes.
Okay, I got you. Then we already talked enough about the interview. One thing that, like, this is not a bad front office at all. This is a very good front office. I just think that their biggest problem is they're not great, and that's the big separator between, you know, where the fans want this team to be and like the just overall consensus about the front office, to where, like, I I gotta give it to them. They draft very well. They had the most all pros in the NFL this past season. They had 9 all pros on this team. They're going to return 8 all pros to this football team this upcoming season. You know, no matter how great all these additions that other teams have made are, you know, the Packers, the Eagles, all these teams adding these players, at the end of the day, they're not returning as many all pros as the Cowboys did, you know, which is why repetition is very important. And when I say this stuff, trying to drill it in people's heads here, is that talent is not the issue with this football team. They have plenty of talent on this team. And right now it's all about whether or not the coaching staff, both on offense and defense, is going to get the most out of these guys. But why I think Mike Zimmer is such a big part to what they're doing is, defense is the problem, or not the problem. This is what I mean. In the playoffs, in 3 of the 5 losses that Dak Prescott has had over the course of his career, the defense has given up over 30 points. Let me look this up. I believe it was the Boys headline said this. I want to bring up this stat when it comes to winning records, or records just in general, playoff records, when their team gives up 30 or more points. In 3 of Dak's playoff losses, the defense allowed 30 plus points. Other quarterbacks' playoff record, when their defense allows 30 plus points: Tom Brady 2-3, Aaron Rodgers 1-5, Drew Brees 0-3, Joe Montana 0-3, Brett Favre 0-7, Peyton Manning 2-4, John Elway 0-6, Ben Roethlisberger 0-6. Okay, so in 3 of the 5 losses that Dak Prescott has had in the playoffs, the defense gave up 30 or more points. Like, and in some of those games, I think his rookie season, they scored over 30 points in one of those games. What are we talking about here? The Rams game back in 2019, where I think that Dak Prescott was the best player on the team that game. In that particular game, he was the best player on the team. I felt like he did enough to win that game for that team. And unfortunately, they just ended up on the wrong side of the token here. So if you get a better defense that's going to play better football come playoff time, I think that ultimately that'll be the reason why this team will ultimately do whatever they're going to do this upcoming season. I was talking about how, you know, when it comes to the defense, why Mike Zimmer is going to be so important is because of the picture I sent you yesterday with the 30 plus point. Like, in 3 of his 5 losses, the defense gave up 30 plus points. And when you look at other records for other great quarterbacks under those circumstances, they all have poor records in those circumstances. So I feel like, and in 2 of those games, I think Dak Prescott played well enough to win those games, the Rams game and the Packers game, where it's like, all right,
Look
if
at
we
the
have
Super
Mike
Bowl.
Zimmer.
Yeah, look at the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl, and tell me defenses don't win championships.
And exactly. And you look at the Super Bowl before that, a defense lost their team the championship. The Philadelphia Eagles, they lost that defense lost the game for them. And it's like, you go back over like the last 5 years, you see more examples of low scoring Super Bowls than high scoring Super Bowls. I mean, the Rams won 23-17 or something like that.
Right.
The Patriots won 13-3. The Buccaneers won that Super Bowl because of the defense. Like, they put up a lot of points. Kansas City scored 8 points in that game? That was
Right.
like the number one offense in football. So, to put a bow on it, the reason why, Mike Zimmer is such an important acquisition is because this defense needs to play better. And if they do, I think that's honestly, could be the separator.
It's automatic. If you can go 12-5 with a defense that had a glaring, gaping hole in the middle of it the entire season, that tells you how much better this team can be if you just stop the bleeding. And I think that's where we are right now. We're at a point where we have a coach who is going to emphasize stopping that bleeding. So, I got to go pick up my daughter, but this has been a great show. That's definitely what I agree with. I think that the defense will definitely take steps forward because, it's not that hard to take steps forward. When you stop the stunts, you start to put personnel packages together that make sense. The rest is history. We have the talent. We have the depth. So let's see it. Let's see it.
Hey.
And I think when scheme meets talent, you get greatness.
Hey, Akuya, I appreciate you, bro. This was a great show. Hey, we got to do this again soon, my guy.
Yep. Got you, man. Talk to you soon. Peace.
All right, guys. Thank you for coming out. Make sure to like up the stream on both sides, Cowboys Beat and Akuya Media. And we'll see you guys next time. Appreciate you guys for coming out.